Hi, before we start the film, I will let you know I will be at Twin Cities Con this year, November 11th, 12th, and 13th. I'll be selling my comics and artworks, and I have a table. So come see me at Twin Cities Con. We'll put the link down below so you can get your tickets early. There is a discount for that as well. It's at the Minneapolis Convention Center. We love to talk to fans. We love to see support of the show. So come see me at Twin Cities Con, November 11th, 12th, and 13th.
Now for the episode.
Okay, everybody. Barbarian is one of the things I'm going to talk about is cliches. Usually we do it with a negative connotation, but I want to talk about with Barbarian that it's actually something that it's a positive. It actually could be effective.
Yeah.
So with my thesis, I'm going to talk about be comfortable with cliches when we write. We're going to be confronted with them. And this movie shows that it could actually be effective.
Yeah. There's a way to do cliches and a way to subvert cliches. And you almost have to marry the two now.
Yeah.
Because if you do all the cliches, people know them. If you subvert all the cliches, people expect it. So you kind of have to marry the two. I think Barbarian does a pretty good job. But we'll talk about it in a few minutes here as we break down the new 2022 film. The film that, again, in a year of great horror, is just another one on the pile.
Right.
We're talking Barbarian. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Again, you can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that link down below to see if you want to join, to tell us other films you want us to review. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out the webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we're going to talk about another monster hit. Mega monster horror film hit from 2022. It's Barbarian.
So when Tess arrives at her Airbnb late in the night, she discovers a guy, Keith, is already there. Seems like he's also rented the place for the night. He invites her inside to sort out the mess, and she enters, unaware that something horrifying is waiting inside for her.
So with my presentation talking about Barbarian, I want you to understand when you're writing, you're going to eventually come across your character, or a setting or an atmosphere is cliches. And here is a great example that it can be effective. You don't want to kind of shy away from them, but you want to overuse them. But here, Zach's showing you that these are all the things you like about horror. I'm going to show it to you and present to you that it's an enjoyable experience. I really did like this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm supposed to do the review later, but let's talk about writing aspect of it, because Zach's kind of a comedy writer first.
Yeah, I mean, Miss
Zach
March,
the
the Civil War on Drugs, and of course a multitude of sketches from TV's The Whitest Kids You Know, a show I went to college watching a lot of. Zach Krieger was part of that group, and yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anything that he's written that's not been at least more comedy than whatever else it is.
There's comedy in this.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say it's more comedy at all.
No.
So, of course, Zach Krieger was reading the book The Gift of Fear, which I have not read, but there's a chapter in there that's talking about how women need to trust their instincts. When you're in a bad situation, you need to know you're in a bad situation. When you don't feel comfortable, there might be a reason for that.
Yeah.
I think we as men tend to kind of downplay the female experience of walking to our cars. My wife tells me all the time she carries her keys, as a defensive weapon oftentimes when she's walking to her car alone. Things like that where it's like we don't see it from that point of view. So he said, I'm going to write a movie that's basically
every
you
step
yelling
of the
at
way.
the screen. You should be going back. You shouldn't be digging further. And Tess is going to be that character who
But
takes
we
a
always
little
see
too
that.
long.
We always see that in horror films. Of why are you going upstairs? Don't go in the basement. You're going to go in the basement. But we also want you to go to the basement because we as viewers want to see what's down there too. Yeah. Go ahead and do it. No, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's kind of put this on the idea of basically almost like an exercise of the film. I think he thought about crafting it as a short film and realized, I actually think I have something more entertaining here, and shoehorned in some other things that actually made a very twisty-turny experience.
Right. I could tell from when you and I both do writers' workshops and writings and everything that after going down in the basement, it's like, okay, what's down there? And if you watch the movie, then you realize the step like, oh, I got to think about what's down there.
Yeah.
Right. There's increment levels of what Barbarian is, and there's infinite characters of what could be a Barbarian. You have other people in this movie that could be Barbarian as well.
Yeah.
Not just including the house as well.
Yeah, and so we're going to definitely talk, like, every spoiler past the first 5 minutes is going to be divulged now. If you haven't seen the film, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm very positive on it. Go see it in theaters. It's currently, I think, on HBO Max.
It's got a great trailer, man.
Yeah, and that's one thing I wanted to say about it was that the trailer for this movie, it's hard for me to use the term great because every time I watched the trailer, I was like, oh, this looks bad. This looks like every other
because
movie.
It's cliche.
Yeah, because the whole trailer is the cliche. It's the first 5 minutes. It's don't go in the frickin' house. Find somewhere else to go. And so when the movie starts that way, the only reason I went to see this movie was word of mouth. That is the only reason I got off my butt to go check it out, was that it had good reviews and word of mouth, because I hated the trailer. I hated the poster.
I liked the trailer. Well, it's because we talked about cliches. Right?
Yeah, but I'd seen the trailer maybe like 5-10 times, and when I finally sat down in the movie, I realized, oh, this is that movie with that trailer I hated. Like, I didn't even put it together, because I just went and saw the movie.
So I think with Barbarian production, you have the right way to approach, which is a grassroots campaign, organic people talking about critics and giving high praise, because the opposite, the other spectrum that's out now is Smile, which has a great campaign out there. They're putting people in baseball games, doing expressions.
Oh man, what a fantastic campaign.
They're snipping people in other public events and promoting the movie. So they had a wide promotions. And when you have something like Barbarian that's heavily cliched, but in a right way, you wanted to do the opposite. You're not going to bombard it with, because a lot of people, that trailer, we've seen this before. Right. So I think they did the excellent approach. Just let the grassroots campaign of people talking about it, like us. We'll do the work for you guys.
Well, and let's think about it like that too, because I get this conversation comes up a lot about why these like small, like increases in theater size, why premiere things at festivals, like why not just put out the movie. Barbarian, I really think, only succeeds as a successful film, box office wise, because it had I think it was Fantastic Fest that it had its first premiere at.
San Diego Con too.
Or was it? Yeah, okay. So early on, it had a very like small campaign of like, let's get it out to the people that want to see this movie. Not everybody, because some critics are horror-verse, some fans are horror-verse. Let's get it out to the people that want to see this movie. And so they showed it, got a great reception from there. They did. And then a couple of theaters at a time. They just slowly opened it up. And so by the time it got to my theater, I was like, oh, it's here. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because the people seeing it going on Twitter, let them do the work of promoting and talking about it, because we know it's going to be a positive. These are people who like horror movies. This is for people who love horror movies.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be a mass consumption thing, but it's one of those that you can probably rewatch again.
Yeah.
Rewatchability's up, and you can watch a large audience. And I was in the theater by myself and enjoy it.
Yeah, the second time I went to see it, I was alone. The first time I was in a theater that had that great experience of everyone like throwing their popcorn in the air, like, holy crap, that happened. It goes back to even things like, let's talk about a movie that's completely different genre. The Fabelman, Steven Spielberg's new movie, has had a couple of showings now at festivals.
Yeah.
I'm dying to see it, because they're holding it away from me. Like, I was less excited about it. Steven Spielberg.
It's like you're in the crib and Spielberg's like, you want to see this movie?
Exactly. Yeah. So by the time that movie comes out, I'm going to be first in line, and I was not excited for that film. So I think, doing that slow increase, I think Barbarian has the ability of a film like another very different movie, Hardcore Henry, is an action movie all from the first point of
base
view.
it on what other people do.
Yeah. So Hardcore Henry is all first-person shooter movie, the entire 95 minutes. Right. It's not a movie that I myself pop on a lot for me, but it's a movie I love to show to other people.
It's a great case study of filmmaking.
Yeah. And so this is a case where Barbarian might not be a movie that I pop on a lot. I'm probably going to buy it. But it's a movie that my wife has not seen yet. I can't wait to show her this movie, because I can't wait to be that guy sitting down with her, like looking over it the whole time, like, it's good. It's good stuff.
So overall, I think they did. I think that Zach's right, because it's comedy. So you think, is this a comedy horror? We are going to talk about comedy horrors on our Patreon eventually. It's another avenue that we could talk about. But here, it's the presentation of horror, and not to mention, you put the weather in your environment. That's the reason why she gets in all the steps of what not to do, is because
it's
dark.
Useful weather.
Yeah, it's dark and raining, which is another way of presenting, I can't really see my environment. You always close in environments for horror movies. But also, excellent casting, because you have Bill Skarsgård, who we all know played It.
And that creates the sensation that we can't trust him.
Yes.
That's good stunt casting.
Yeah,
almost.
you have Georgina Campbell, who needs a breakout time.
Yeah.
She was in the TV show Krypton. That's what I know her from. I know she did a couple other movies. Then you bring back some people that we recognize, like Justin Long, Kate Bosworth in the movie. Where the hell is she?
She's one of the voices, I believe. Her and Sarah Paxton are both doing. Like, Sarah Paxton also voices like the nursing video, and she's the assistant on the phone. And then Megan and Melissa, I'm pretty sure, are the two characters that are like on the phone. Like, one of them is AJ calls her, and then the other one is the person.
She has to be voiceover work.
Yeah, right. So I think it's just like friends of Zach kind of supporting. Yeah. Speaking of friends of Zach supporting, this is another great time for you to use your friendships. Show people your script, because he showed this to his good friend, a guy named Jordan Peele, who tends to know a little bit about comedy, a little bit about horror, helped him like kind of give thoughts on the script, give a screening. This is where your friends can really help you out. And that means show your trustworthy friends.
And then rounding up, you have some old veterans like Richard Brake. He's in the movie Mandy, but also killed Bruce Wayne's parents in Batman
He was
Begins.
the Night King on Game of Thrones for a couple seasons.
He does well effective because even when he comes out of that house, you're like, it's the creepy dude. He's doing creepy stuff.
Just like Skarsgård. It's like that stunt casting that really works.
And then James Butler, who's been in movies for many, many decades. And he finally gets an opportunity, kind of like shine a little bit. Yeah, gets a little bit. But it's nice to see him because he's been always that, when the cops break into the police, he's always that third guy at the right. They're always that kind of guy. But it's nice to get him.
Always the bridesmaid.
Yeah, he's always get those lines and everything. I hope the scenario that I'm thinking in my head plays out when Zach pitched this to the executives, and the executives, well, it's a horror movie. Can we have female? Can we show female nudity? Take her top off? Oh yeah, we'll have that.
We'll have some female nudity. We will. You're not gonna like it.
Yeah, can we have like female top off? Yeah, we'll have that. Yeah, it's a horror movie, right? Yeah. I like that. If you did that play, I would like it even better.
But even on the surface, it's a really, really good, simple premise. I mean, of the first 5 minutes, two people are at an Airbnb. They're both booked at the same time. It's something I've thought about, like that makes me averse to going to like an Airbnb. Is like, what if
everybody's horror of Airbnb? Yeah.
And then just kind of like ratcheting everything up and having every twist and turn. The movie's finale is not something we haven't seen before, but it's the way that we get there that I think is the most compelling part, and the reason people are talking about it is that every like 5-10 minutes the narrative shifts and you're watching a different movie.
Yeah. Before we go to our overall review, because we kind of be a little in, there's a major plot hole in this movie that people are blasting on the internet. If you're going to critique movies because of a plot hole, I'm going to guess every movie has it. Yeah, there's a massive plot hole about this that the monster can at will all the time. But then you realize, well, how does he do it? Who cares? Yeah. Plot holes are in everything. Yeah.
Well, here's the difference.
That's the other thing I want to talk about is cliches. Don't worry about cliches. Don't worry about plot holes when you're writing.
Well, that's the whole problem, is that a plot hole is only important if it pulls you out of the movie. There are some that I've watched where it's like, ooh, that really damages my thought process on this. There's other things where, like, I still remember to this day finding out from someone, hey, you remember that scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker's up there at the party and Batman flies out and then, like, he just left the Joker with all those people and the scene ends? I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the way I watch the movie.
No,
but it's one of those moments where I'm like, probably would have tried to fix that if I'd have found it. But you're always going to have plot holes. It's just whether or not they drag you out of the movie or whether or not they matter to the film.
Yeah, so this doesn't really bother me. So up next is our review of Barbarian. Overall, Barbarian, I don't think will get lost in the shuffle of all the horror movies of the year, but it's going to be one of those snippets of this typical horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not doing anything. I'm tired of the term elevated horror. I'm really tired of it because we use that term because of the Academy Awards ignoring horror movies. And when they actually shine a light on horror movies, then we call it elevated horror. Elevated horror is just the barometer of Academy Awards, and to hell with them.
Yeah.
But this is what we like with horror movies. And it's effective. It's not really inventing the wheel, but it's also the stuff that we love and enjoy because we don't go to the basement. Oh, you're shouting at the theater. You're shouting at the screen as everything is played out, right?
I think it will stand apart from everything else because of the way Krieger tells the story.
Yeah.
Like, I think when you watch X, even though the movie does shift halfway through, you know where it's going. The opening of the film tells you where this movie is going to go. I think if you watch Scream or Pearl or all these other movies, you know the general trajectory. You may not know all the bits and pieces. I think Barbarian, with the great marketing campaign of not telling people stuff, and just using that word of mouth, makes a movie where you don't know what's going to happen after the first 10 minutes. And I was so happy for that experience because it's very rare when you can go into a movie and not know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think I think Zach is effective with the music. Mm-hmm. It's played out even when there's mundane activities. Even when she goes to the job interview and she goes, "Where are you staying?" "I'm staying this place." She goes, "You really shouldn't be there." And then the music, boom, boom, kicks in. Where if you didn't have the music, that wouldn't be effective. Then you realize, oh, right, if somebody else is telling you, you shouldn't really be there.
Yeah.
And then she's trying to well, I'm a tough girl. I'm a wildcat. I can handle it. Then you realize, and then the daylight
Yeah.
Then you realize what the hell she's at. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the music was done by Anna Drubik, who did some of the Fear Street movies last year.
It's a 4/4 drum beat. Oh, boom.
And I really liked her score for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So Anna Drubik has actually been doing a good number of films. Her scores are kind of that like mixture of familiar beats, but also different from everything else. So it's kind of like, even though she's done Fear Street and Scary Stories in this film, they do have kind of a symbionce. Like, you know, how John Williams' scores do kind of sound alike, but they're also very different scores.
It's not electronic, but very synthesized.
Yeah. Very. I don't want to say overworked, but worked over in the post process. Yeah.
It's called. I think the term is overproduced.
Yeah, but that sounds bad too.
I
think it works pretty well.
But it's effective because you have the whole scene of Richard Brake just going grocery shopping, and you're like, why is this foreboding? And then you realize why it's foreboding. He's a guy living alone, but he's shopping for baby stuff. Mm-hmm. Then you're like, oh, this is really creepy.
Well, and that scene itself doesn't even really feel like the scene of that flashback, because we've kind of discovered it, or we're figuring that part out when we jump back in time. They even show us, you know, the standard aspect ratio change that happens there.
Yeah,
it's the moment that he pulls over at the person's house and he pulls out the suit, and you're like, oh, that's not him.
And it's not his name. That's the one thing. The suit's Carlos, but his name is Frank. And nobody wants to call him out on it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very effective. You put the weather in your story, be comfortable if you're going to put cliches, but the effective reasoning for cliches. Every step of the way has a logical step what she wants to do, right? She's, all right, my bedroom door open, I'm going to go on the basement. Maybe there's some things down in the basement, but then you don't really think about the other aspects of from behind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things of going forward in this movie, of writing. We're going forward and don't really think about behind, which is consequences. Justin Long's character wants to continue forward, but he doesn't want to like deal with what's behind him.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so much so that his character has a choice to make later on in the film that could not redeem what he's done, because we don't really know the validity of it, but we assume he's probably done something. But a choice that could not redeem him, but change him moving forward and elevate his character to maybe not as big of a monster as we assumed. And then he makes the bad choice anyway.
So I love it. At each character, when they move forward, not thinking about what's behind them, there's a consequence to it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole aspect of the movie, because we want to press in horror movies. Press on, keep going. Don't do exposition. Just keep going. Move forward. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We want to see what the tunnel is. What the heck is down there? And they shoot it very well, because they shoot it not only from the basement point of view, but also from her point of view. Like, there's nothing down here, and I hear something.
Yeah.
So you have that kind of...
What I really like about those down in the tunnel scenes, though, is the moment that she goes down there, I'm like, okay, so it's going to be this movie. It's going to be her in the basement movie. And I appreciate that it's shot where the darkness is not overbearing on the film. It's really giving us as much light as she has, and it's focusing on her point of view in the light source. It's not a movie that's overly dark where I'm like, oh man, I hate movies that just get so dark that it like blocks everything out.
Right. It's almost like you want to light a lighter in your theater seeing it. Yeah.
But he shoots it very well. Cinematography by Zach Cooperstein. Yeah. Very good cinematography, especially in those dark scenes, because I don't feel frustrated with the darkness. I tend to get frustrated with dark movies where it's just like either show me or skip past the scene because you're not helping me. But I think this is very well shot in the dark.
But it has a different interpretation of what could be a barbarian. Is it the monster, or is it the other people? I think you can assign Justin Long's character as a barbarian. Mm-hmm. You can assign maybe even, not really Keith, but also...
Potential.
But Richard Brake is definitely the barbarian. Mm-hmm. So it's also... Barbarian is also usually a male point of aspect title. You don't really call a female barbarian, but it's also it's an old term of non-Romans. Ancient Romans called barbarians non-Romans, but it's also a male point of view kind of a thing.
Yeah,
and I like that. You know, the two guys that you're kind of like, they're barbarian. Justin Long's character definitely is a barbarian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, again, he's painted as I love halfway through the movie. Like again, I didn't know Justin Long was in this movie.
Yeah,
I love that halfway through the movie, I'm like, oh, it's like the sequel is basically started, and we've moved on.
But you give him every opportunity. Like maybe it's an misunderstanding. Maybe somebody's, you don't really know the aspect until he explains it to his buddy.
Yep,
and like,
played by Zach Krieger.
Played by Zach Krieger, but also the finance guy talking to him. You understand that people have already had a relationship with him, are pretty much cold to him.
Yeah,
probably had to deal with this before.
Yeah, the thing is like. again, just great use of time in both
use
the
of writing,
entire
too.
film there, because we are introduced to him. He seems like a fun, but he seems like Justin Long. Justin Long is normally a pretty likable guy. We get the introduction of these accusations, and my immediately thought is like, okay, we're painting him as our new protagonist, so I assume he's
from
I
Hollywood.
assume he's a good guy.
Yeah, from
and
Hollywood.
Then, we start to see these interactions with other people. His immediate thought is like, she's a bitch, and I've got to kick her ass. And then he leaves town. He goes to meet with his friend, and at that scene is when you're like, oh,
he's that
Justin, why?
He's that guy, and then he just discards everybody else's property.
Yeah.
But obviously, his property is managed by a management that doesn't really know what the hell they're doing. So
yeah, and I like that he goes through all the stuff. He chucks things. He picks up the book of Jane Eyre, which is about a woman who's gets imprisoned when she's not mentally all there, so she's kind of locked away. Yeah. He throws that laptop away.
Device. Yes.
There's so many clever hints at what is going on, but they're done in such a loose way that you're not really connecting the dots. I didn't immediately connect the dots on that until I went back and looked at my copy. But the movie is well structured in that way. Zach Krieger is using his comedic timing to horror effect.
Yes.
Because every time there's a new reveal, you forget stuff. Like when she gets locked in the basement, early on in the movie, she gets locked in that basement. I didn't think anything. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess she's going to be stuck there until he arrives. And then, like, enough time passes where she pulls the key out. I'm like, oh, crap, she has the key. Like, I'm not even thinking about the steps that have already taken place. I'm thinking about the moment. And then when they introduce a new piece of information, I'm thinking, oh, crap, what's this? Like, the entire movie was me going like, what's happening next? And I'm just shoveling popcorn in my throat.
Yeah, right. Overall, it's an effective movie. I am recommending to a lot of my female friends who are not really horror fans. I think they will have some recognizable steps that appreciate this movie. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of my female friends are like, it's a horror movie. I was like, I think you might enjoy this one. I think you recognize some steps that especially if you're female, but use like some things like don't do this, you're doing this, but also the enjoyment like, all right, I want to know what's going on down there, right?
Yeah. This is the kind of movie I really want my dad to watch. Because my dad is the ultimate, like, oh, I don't care for horror movies. And then he'll walk by a scene and be like, why is she going up the staircase? And he'll 5 minutes later, he'll sit down and he'll be shouting at the TV with his hands in the air. It's a really, really solid horror movie experience. I do wonder, with time given to it, is it about more the experience of watching it, about the experience of peeling back the layers, or about the finished product? I'm wondering how this film is going to feel to me 5 years down the road.
I was just going to say that. I don't know if the longevity is there, but for something that we've all seen different aspects of horror, it's nice to come back to something that's just not really paint by numbers, but all the things that you appreciate.
I think this will be a show your friends movie. Yeah. This will be a get a buddy together and then have that thing where you're like kind of looking at them the whole time, watching how they react to it. My only fault with the film is that question of, am I enjoying the experience of peeling back the layers, or does the film make 100% like really make use of its story that well? Yeah. I'm one of the guys, I really hate the title. I know that I see like what the idea was. It was a placeholder title. I think it's interesting that they're on Barbary Street and it's 476, which is the year the barbarians invaded Rome. Airbnb is made up of the letters in Barbarian. So I don't know, like there's some like weird like stuff with the title. I just don't really know if I like the title because much like the poster, much like the trailer, it doesn't give me the story. It doesn't give me the movie. So I don't know. That's a little nitpick.
Well, you can't say people under the stairs.
Yeah, you can't really say, nursing videos are fun for everyone. Yeah. So,
all right, so what did you think of Barbarian? My God, you better have watched it before we talked about it.
Hey, we gave you the spoiler warning. You had your time. Yeah. But check it out if you haven't watched it yet. God, I'm sorry. It's on HBO Max right now, and it's also still playing in some theaters in a limited capacity. So you got a couple more days left before Halloween. Now's your time to check it out, and let us know your thoughts down below. You're allowed to get a little spoilery, I think, in those comments, because I think people should have seen it at that point, and our show is mostly spoilers anyway. So let us know what you thought about it down below. Do you want to see Zach Krieger return to the world of horror, or would you rather he stay with Whitest Kids You Know and making comedies? Let us know your thoughts on that. And please,
I do have a thought. I think he's found what he needs to do.
I think he might be teaming up with Jordan Peele for an anthology film. So let us know your thoughts, and make sure to like and subscribe. They're 2 free things that you can do. They help to support us so much, and they make sure you never miss an episode.
We really
of the
do
show.
appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah. And don't forget, check out that Patreon link like Nick mentioned below. All those links are down in the description. Thank you guys for joining us, and you can find my film reviews. Still got a couple days left on 31 Days of Horror Resurrection over at goatfilmreviews.com.
And you can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts, and be nice to your mother.
Yeah.